This is Real Estate Real Talk, a weekly podcast about real estate industry news that actually matters, hosted by some of the industry's leading agents. Here are this week's hosts.
Welcome back to Real Estate Real Talk podcast. We're here today with Mark Given. Hi, Mark.
I'm glad to be here.
So, Mark, for listeners meeting you for the first time, can you give us a little background about your real estate career and how you became a CRS certified instructor?
Quick answer is I spent 20 years in retail before real estate. Most everybody does something before they get into real estate. And I was a CEO of a retail company, and I sold that company and then got into real estate. That was more than a quarter of a century ago. And so I sold actively hard after having all that more than 2 decades experience in retail. I was interested in the fast track. I wasn't interested in taking 3 to 5 years to build my business. What I discovered was CRS was the path that got me there. So I started teaching CRS classes after about 6 years of really hard active selling. I was very happy there and it worked out great. I'm in North Carolina. But what I learned was I enjoyed being in front of agents, helping them grow their businesses more than I just wanted to do it myself. So I became a CRS instructor because after having taken a number of CRS classes and watching those instructors and the depth of their knowledge and the mastery of what they did, I thought, gosh, I wonder if I can do that and be just like that too. And so I went through a very difficult process that it took to become a CRS senior instructor. That was in 2005 and 6. And I have been teaching. We don't call ourselves senior instructors anymore. We call ourselves certified instructors now. But it's been more than 20 years. So I have taught in 42 states, and I'd like to do all 50. And I've taught hundreds and thousands of CRS agents and those that wanted to become CRS agents. And that's probably longer than you wanted, but I'm just passionate about helping agents grow their businesses and succeed. That's why I wanted to become a CRS instructor. That's why I've remained a CRS instructor, even though I've been around a while, but I'm not going anywhere.
I love the depth of knowledge and expertise that we have with instructors like you, Mark. Seeing as how you've worked so closely with agents for such a long time, what are some challenges that you see consistently popping up with client relationships?
I guess to kind of jump right into it, the reason that we're here is because I wanted to talk about conflict, right? And that's the answer to your question. We can't barely get up in the morning and not recognize, and if we think that we're going to get through the day without some level of conflict, we're fooling ourselves. I mean, it can be on a personal level, it can be on a relationship level, but it certainly delves into business. And in a real estate transaction, you're never going to have one that doesn't have some kind of conflict. And so understanding not just that it exists, but understanding your level of how you choose to deal with conflict, how you react to conflict, how you communicate when there is conflict, how you best serve your clients and customers to help them accomplish their goals is a significant part of what we do. And if we do it great, we build long-term relationships that grow our business for years to come and beyond. I wrote this course on conflict management as conflict resolution because there's no such thing as going through a day without some level of conflict. And sometimes it's exhausting and other times it's very manageable. But we can all be better at dealing with relationships, and conflict is part of relationships and certainly part of every real estate transaction that every agent is going to go through. There's no such thing as having a transaction without some level of conflict.
And the course we're discussing specifically today is Mark's pre-conference course titled Conflict Resolution Solutions-Based Listening and Negotiations. And Mark, as you just stated, conflict is unavoidable in real estate transactions, but escalation is optional. So what does this look like in a real-world transaction?
Well, I'm going to talk about in that pre-conference class that there is both internal conflict and external conflict. And so how do you deal with that, right? How do you prepare for that? Because you can't control other people. You can only decide how you're going to react and improve that circumstance. So internal and external is part of conflict, But that's not the only thing. I mean, we have conflict that we can prepare for if we are smart enough to recognize that when we prepare, we'll get better results. And so we'll talk about that also, the 5 levels or the 5 ways to deal with conflict. And we'll even do a little exercise. It's a personal quiz that everybody will take in that class pre-celebration. They will discover their preferred conflict management style, because there are 5 conflict management styles. And if you've never taken a psychology class on conflict, well, you maybe don't even realize that. But in the class, it's simple. You can't fail it. It's just a way to recognize, okay, when I have a problem, when I have a challenge, when I have these issues that come up, what's my preferred method of dealing with it, and how can I be better? How can I prepare for it? There's 5 methods, and so we have the ability to do all 5. How can I be smart enough to prepare myself and maybe change? This may be the way I like to deal with it, but that's not going to work in this scenario. So how should I instead react? And the better we are in recognizing in ourselves and with our clients, that's how we alleviate some of the both external conflict and internal conflict. So it's a fun and it's an interactive class, and we do it in 4 hours. I don't know how we get it done in 4 hours, but it's pretty eye-opening. And we learn things in the class that you just don't learn except through experience. And sometimes experience can be pretty painful.
I love that this course is going to be so interactive, and it seems like this would be really helpful for any relationship inside or outside of work. I'm really curious about these 5 conflict management styles. Does it relate at all to any personality types or personality tests like MBTI or DISC profiles?
Yeah, actually, that's a completely separate issue within the 5 conflict management styles. Personalities is part of that, but it's not really part of the quiz itself. And so in the class, we'll talk about the DISC profile, but I'm not going to wear people out on the DISC profile. They either have some experience with it or not. They're going to learn that that DISC profile has been around for nearly 100 years. And so people are people, the world changes, but people still are people. So we'll talk about the DISC profile, but we'll also talk about what I call the 4 Ps, which are the 4 dynamic personality styles, so that we can kind of identify ourselves. We have all 4 of those styles, but we will identify them, explain them, and then have a conversation, even a little workshop about in the class about what their personality style is and how that can be massaged in a way to improve our relationships, to improve our conversations, to improve our negotiations. And so that's another part of the class. And you are 100% right. Our personalities can be dynamically important in how we choose and prepare to deal and negotiate in real estate transactions. So that's another element of the class that we talk about, personality profiles. And we won't wear people out with the DISC profile. We'll in fact talk about that, but then reflect on these 4 Ps and compare them so that we understand better, can better and much quicker apply them. Because that's what's more important. It's one thing to understand it. It's another thing to be able to utilize it and apply it. And that's what I want them walking out of class being able to do immediately, is to apply it better than they did when they walked in.
So, Mark, without giving too much away, are you able to give us a little hint about what's going to be talked about in the course?
So let me just suggest that much of the conflict is created because we don't slow down enough to listen, right? We don't actually hear what's not being said. My dear friend, Ed Hatch, gosh, it's been 25 years ago. He was a CRS instructor for a long, long time. Some of the folks that are listening in will remember Ed, that maybe they took a class with Ed. Dear friend, one of the smartest people I've ever known that dealt and taught relationships. And one of the things I learned from Ed probably in 2001, so it's been 25 years ago, was that we get better when we listen better. And that's really hard to do. So my dad, when I was young, a teenager, he taught me what he called the 90-10 principle, which was that if you want to be great at relationships, and particularly in sales, that you would practice the 90-10 rule, which means that you would only talk 10% of the time and you would listen 90% of the time. So we'll talk about that concept, how to apply that concept, and how important it is that we hear what's being said, but we also hear what's not being said. And we will relate that to electronics, right? And how difficult it is when we just use technology as a tool to speed things up. And in the reality, right, when we're trying to improve relationships and negotiations and lessen conflict, we need to improve this personal contact, whether it be on a phone or in a Zoom, right? Electronic, like we're doing today, and how we depend so much on text and email and how dangerous that can be. So we'll talk about the 90-10 rule that my dad taught me and that Ed taught me some many years later. I've always just appreciated that lesson that I learned so early in my real estate career, and it made me a better agent. So I'm going to share not just the things I've learned, but the wisdom that I've learned from some of these great CRS instructors that I had when I first got started, and how I've grown and learned because of those things. So I'll pass it on. How about that? I'll just pass it on.
Oh, I love that. We learn, we grow, we pass it on, and it has a ripple effect. We got to just keep teaching, keep learning, and keep inspiring others. Now, you mentioned how technology can lead to conflict. And I can see how the tone might not come across the same if it was in person versus an email or in text message. Now, do you have any tips on how to communicate, whether it's in person or through technology?
Yeah, here's a quick tip. The science shows that our attention span currently with a healthy adult brain is about 8 seconds right now. And so we use technology as a means to accelerate the communication. But the reality of it is the attention span is so small and so short that when we only use technology, it lessens our ability to clearly communicate. Spell check is not our friend. And every time we type something by text or by email, the science shows that about 50%, in the United States anyway, about 50% of what we communicate by electronics is not understood at the depth that we need it to be understood. So about 50% of everything we say using electronics is not going to benefit our client in the way we want it to. In fact, it might just frustrate them. So the tip would be we got to recognize when to use technology to help communicate and speed the process, and when not to use technology to connect. And by the way, what we're doing here is a much better method of communicating. We could have done this by sending out an email to everybody, right? But the reality of it is people aren't going to read it, and then people are not going to necessarily understand it. But when they can see you, when they can hear you, tone of voice, body language, we hurt ourselves with technology when we get in too big of a hurry. So my tip is we just got to be smarter, because 50% of what we communicate electronically is not understood the way we want it to. And people have such short attention spans that we harm it, right? We make it worse by trying to speed up the process at times that it shouldn't be too fast, right? We need to just slow it down. And I'm an old guy, so maybe, right, that's just personal that I'm saying, we need to slow down because I'm slowing down. But the reality of it is it's just the way our brains work, and we need to be smart about the way we function. And if we don't, we create more conflict. We don't lessen it. We just make it worse. We just add to and compound the situation to the point that it takes us more time because we have to repeat ourselves over and over. And we have to resend stuff that we could have just communicated better the first time. So I think that's the answer to your question. And, and we will spend time in that class having some fun learning how to be better at it and recognize, hey, we're not perfect. So how can we be better? How can we improve right now, tomorrow, right? How do we get better today so that tomorrow things will be better?
Now, Mark, you mentioned avoidance. And I think sometimes agents are not talking in person and rather using technology because they're trying to avoid what could be a difficult or uncomfortable situation. And they're just trying to keep the peace that way. What do you think?
Well, I think we have to balance that. I mean, we all have the ability. That's one of the conflict management styles. The 5 conflict management styles, by the way, is avoiding, right? And there are people that are serious avoiders, and that's unhealthy and there's not good. But we have to balance avoidance. And so I think for the most part, people understand, most people get it, that, avoiding is a solution, but it's not always the best solution. Some people are really good at being a bull in a china shop, right? I mean, they're just really good at just charging forward, and I'll just tell you the way it is. But most people are not like that. And so we have to balance avoidance with transparency and honesty. And I think much of the answer to your question is that we address that issue right up front, right? That there's going to, look, we're in a real estate transaction. So there's going to be some difficult scenarios that come up. By the way, this doesn't have to apply to just real estate. You could just say, I'm getting married, right? We're going to have some situations that come up, right? Or we're having a child. We're going to have some situations that come up. And at times we're going to have those hard conversations. And you can just be honest and say, I'm really good at that, or I'm not really good at that. And so I need to be able to give you some signals, and I need to be able to communicate in a way that says, we got to have this hard conversation, and it's not easy for me, or let's get on with it. And recognizing your strengths and your weaknesses, because avoidance, and that was the focus of your question, avoidance can be very positive if we do it the right way, right? But it can also be very damaging if we do it the wrong way. And so we're not going to turn our class into a psychology class, but we are going to turn it into an understanding of strengths and weaknesses, transparency, to help us recognize that we can see it coming most of the time, or we can know that it's coming. And that's when we need to be prepared to address the issues that need to be addressed right now, not make it personal, right? Don't be finger pointing. And let's talk about the issues and not the failings of individuals, right? Don't make it personal. So we're going to talk about that too. How to use avoidance in a way that doesn't harm relationships, doesn't make it personal, but deals with the issue at hand. In other words, we deal with the problem, not necessarily the people, because people make decisions based on emotions, and then they justify those decisions with facts. And so we have to kind of stick to the facts and avoid the, finger pointing. And we certainly live in a world where people love to blame. So we need to be careful with blame. And so avoidance is part of that. Good and bad. I mean, yes, sometimes people are at fault and we might need to address that, but sometimes we don't have to address who messed it up. We just need to address how we fix it, right? What's the next step?
So, for an agent listening today, is there one great tip that you would give them to lower the conflict in their transactions?
Yeah. All right. So here's what I would suggest. And it almost steps into a class that I wrote years ago with Jackie Leavenworth. Jackie was a great instructor too, and she's retired now. Awesome. And we wrote a time management course, probably time for me to update that. But the answer to your question is things that get scheduled get done. And when you start your day in preparation for what's ahead, you're going to make your day better, your client's day better, your family's day better. You're going to make everything better. So let me say it again. Things that get scheduled get done. And I recognize that there are fires that come along that we have to put out every day, but many things are predictable. So I believe that the answer to your question is taking the time every morning, or at least the night before. So for me, it's the morning of, but as a minimum, the night before, to review what's getting ready to happen for me that day and actually spend some time thinking through it. How do I prepare for it? How do I get it? What do I need to schedule to get that done? What is necessary to make sure that things run smoothly? And I think that's the answer to your question. When we're more focused, when we have better habits, when we prepare better, that's when we're going to have less conflict. Our lives are going to be much easier. It's not that we're not going to have conflict, because there's always going to be that thing that comes up that maybe was not anticipated, right? We have those every single day, but we have less of those, or they're less dynamic when we prepare for the possibilities. So once again, for the third time, I think things that get scheduled get done. And so when you think about what needs to happen and you schedule time to prepare and get it done, it's going to dramatically reduce your conflict. And of course, that's about time management too, right? In other words, we make our days better. Our time goes better. We get more accomplished. We're much more productive when we prepare wisely, efficiently, and we have better habits that begin either the night before, if that's the way you want to do it. But for me, it's every morning. right? So having the right habits in the morning will make your day much better. It will help you reduce your conflicts. It won't eliminate conflicts. It will just help you alleviate the problems that are getting ready to come your way. And as Stephen Covey would have said, or did say in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he would say, look, life is hard, right? So do the hard things first. And that's hard to do, but you just got to recognize what are the calls I need to make? What are the issues I got to deal with? And let's get them done. And then we can move on. I guess that's the way he said it was, do the first things first. Covey will always be smarter than I ever will be, but I think that's how he said it. Do the first things first. And we can't do that if we don't plan for them and we don't prepare for them. So that's my tip for your question. Get better at your habits and get better at your focus and prepare ahead of time, and you'll have less conflict and you'll have much improved handling of conflicts.
Yes, so important how you schedule and prepare your time. And I think it'd be super important to schedule time to see you at Sell-a-bration. And from this sneak peek, I can see it's really transferable in so many situations, whether as a real estate agent or other professional jobs or even in your personal life. Why should agents who are coming to Sell-a-bration a day early make sure that they come to your pre-conference session?
From my nearly 70 years of life, there's really 2 ways to learn things. I mean, education is a way to eliminate, solve, prepare for the challenges ahead. And when it comes to real estate, the beauty of Sell-a-bration is that the 2 ways to learn is to come to a class or come to a program and learn. And the other way to learn is through experience. And that's pretty dang painful. So come to Sell-a-bration so that you can learn things that you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know until you know what you don't know. Actually, John Wayne said it this way. He said, life is hard and it's harder when you're stupid. And that's cold. That's harsh. But the truth is, you come to Sell-a-bration and you come to education, you come to events just like this to learn things that you don't know. And why wait to experience it and have a bad experience or a difficult experience when you can have a conversation or a class and you can learn from the eagles, right? Because the people that show up at Sell-a-bration, if you want to fly with the eagles, you go show up with the eagles, right? I mean, you don't go where the turkeys are, right? Or the ducks, right? You got to fly with the eagles, and the eagles show up at Sell-a-bration. And I've known that for 25 years because I started going to CRS classes in 2000 and 26 years now, right? So I started going to Sell-a-bration and I started going to CRS classes in the year 2000 because I didn't want to have to wait and learn painfully. So come, have some fun. Look, it's not an expense, it's an investment. If you look at it as an investment, you'll think, how can I do this? When can I do this? I may have to put it on a credit card, but it would be stupid for me not to. And I'll figure out how to pay for it because it's going to make my life and my business better. Longer answer than you wanted it. But the truth is, you come to Sell-a-bration to grow your mind and your business. And you're going to be sitting beside people that want to learn and have learned things that you don't know. Because we don't know what we don't know until we know what we don't know. So you show up and then you know.
So for listeners who don't know, Sell-a-bration is the Residential Real Estate Council's flagship event. This year, it's taking place March 19th through 21st, and it's going to be in Dallas, Texas. And Mark is teaching a pre-conference course on the 19th. We have 2 sessions before our main event, and the main events are the 20th and the 21st, where we have 2 full days of sessions. Mark, as someone who invests in Sell-a-bration every year, and also the pre-conference courses and the nights out, what is the experience like when you invest in the full package? And what do you gain from these networking experiences as well?
It's amazing how much that's a great question, by the way, because it's amazing how much you can learn when you're not even expecting to learn. So in the hallway or at lunch or at a social, or you just have a conversation with somebody because you stopped and said hello to them at the water fountain or while you were getting, right, a beverage or a snack. It's amazing who you'll meet that you can learn from. And you don't get those experiences if you blow in and blow out. So maximize your experience, whatever amount of time you have. You come to that. And so certainly, we want you to come to the pre-conference events and classes. But then if you can, you hang around, you sign up for the whole thing. And you know what? You'd be smart to write a list of 10 things that you want to accomplish. because you know what? If you're focused, right, about what you want to accomplish, instead of just go have some fun, if you really want to learn and you are specific about the things you're seeking, you will find somebody there that actually has the answer or some experience that can help you solve your problem. So I would say be smart, prepare, show up, and attend as much as you possibly can while you're there. You'll miss out on opportunities if you don't stand at a table and eat with somebody that you don't know, right? And just have a conversation. You'll be amazed at what you'll learn from these CRSs all over the country. So come. We'd love to see all of you there. And it's a great investment.
So, Mark, you've been going to Sell-a-bration for 25, 26 years. Do you have a favorite memory from past celebrations?
Well, it might be a little different for me because from the very beginning, from my CRS experience, I wanted to become a CRS instructor. So I tried to make sure that I was at least in earshot of what the instructors were saying and teaching. And, I'm biased. I think the instructors with CRS are some of the smartest people I've ever met. So I've always gone to learn from the people that are contributing at the events. And so I'm interested in meeting as many people as I can, but I'm also interested in listening to what's being taught, because I can tell you, I'm going to write a list of the 10 things that I want to learn, that I need while I'm there. And then I'm going to seek out those people. And some of that information will come from instructors, but some of it will come from people that are just practitioners, right? Local practitioners in their local communities from across the world that show up. I think just go, right? Just go be with anybody you can be with there, because they're trying to be just like you. They're trying to be the best that they can possibly be at what they do. And I find that most of the people that attend the celebration are not just there to party. They may, but they're there to grow. And so take advantage of that. If you just go with the intentions of growing, you will find the people that will help you grow, whether it be an instructor or whether it be somebody else that's seeking the same things you are. You might end up just sitting beside them in a session, right? In one of the speaker sessions, not one of the classes, but just, so just invest. If you invest in yourself with intent, wonderful things can happen. Be specific about what you want to accomplish, though, and you'll find that those things they'll find you.
Some of the listeners may not have the flexibility in terms of time or budget to join us this year, but we hope that they'll consider joining us in a future celebration. So, Mark, you teach a lot of courses, and I would love to know some details about the topics you specialize in as a course instructor.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. That's very kind of you to even invite me to be self-centered and talk about what I do. So I've been around long enough that when I started with CRS, we were teaching 2-day classes, and we don't do that now. We don't really teach 2-day classes anymore, but we teach, we still teach 1-day classes, and we teach some 4-hour classes. Obviously there's a lot of webinars. I've done webinars for CRS, but to answer your question more clearly, I love teaching negotiation. I love teaching relationship building courses, and I do those. I wrote a book about time management, so I love teaching time management because that helps us improve our circumstances. I've written a number of courses for CRS, currently on the 4-hour format. I have this conflict resolution class that we've already talked about that I'm teaching. I have a referrals for life class that really came as a result of the 2-day CRS 210 class that about 6 of us taught about building, an exceptional referral-based business. But because agents want to whittle it down in time, it's a 4-hour class. It really is a great class, chock full of how to build a lifetime full of referrals. I have recently written a class about another specific negotiation class. I've got the book right here. It's called Dealmaker's Edge. And so, I think that's a wonderful class. Brand new. That's brand new. And then I teach a number of classes that other instructors have written over the years that I have confidence in. Rich Sands wrote a class about first-time home buyers. And so I teach that class. He and I teach that class. He's a great instructor. I hope I do the courses justice and teach it as well as he does. But I actually have a pretty big portfolio of classes that anybody can find on the CRS website or RRC website. because I've been around a long time. Some of them I've written, right? Some of them I've written with other instructors that are still relevant, right? And current, even some that have been updated. And I've contributed to a number of different courses that I teach because I've contributed to those. So, just look me up on the website. I'm still on there. And if you look up Mark Given, you can find this whole portfolio of classes that I teach. I guess really the one thing I would want to say about that is I won't teach anything that I can't be not just well prepared, but extremely knowledgeable about. If I don't feel like, it's hard to be a master of anything, but you can become a master. And if I can't teach it at a level that CRSs deserve, then I won't teach it, right? So I have been invited to come and teach a class that I just don't teach. And when they ask me, I thank them for inviting me, but I refer them to somebody that's an expert on that. So just feel confident that if they reach out to me, that I will come well prepared, and I will teach them stuff they've never seen or heard before that will be up to date and current. And the class will be relevant and valuable. And that's my 100% commitment. I write books on trust. They need to trust me, and I want to be trustworthy on everything I do. So anyway, that's the answer. Look me up. There's a portfolio. I won't teach anything that I can't teach well. I look forward to, there's still 8 states I haven't taught in. I won't name them, but I just need calls from those 8 states so I can teach in those 8 states too.
Only 8 more states. I know you'll get there soon. Could you give our listeners an example of conflict resolution, something that happened in real life and ended up in a win-win situation from the content of the course you'll teach at Sell-a-bration?
Wow, that's a good question. One of the most difficult, we have a CRS course right now on dealing with divorcees. I don't teach that class, right? That's certainly not my area of expertise. But I will tell you, in my quarter of a century in real estate, some of the most difficult transactions I've ever had have been with people that are selling properties, and they have relationship conflicts, right? And so I'm not going to give you a personal story on that because we won't take the time to do that. But I will tell you that's been one of the difficult things for me, is that when I have buyers, right, let's say it's a couple and they can't agree on what they want. So it's not only a conflict to find what they think they want, but then they keep changing their minds, right? Or they're not communicating well. So it can be sellers, right, that are having relationship conflicts, and it can be buyers that are not communicating well with each other. So we are going to touch on some of those scenarios in the class because realistically, we're dealing with people. I mean, the hard thing about life is that we deal with people. And when we add a real estate transaction, right, one of the most important and expensive transactions that anybody ever goes through in their life, it's not easy. And so I think that would be the answer to your question. For me personally, it would be dealing with people that can't even figure out what they want. It's hard for me to solve their problems when they can't even identify and deal with their own problems. I believe that's a challenge for all of us. And so certainly we cannot ignore those type of issues in dealing with people. And we'll talk about those in the class.
Absolutely. How relatable. That sounds like real life.
Yeah, I hope it hasn't happened to you, but I just want you to know that it can happen to anybody, right? And it can happen to everybody. So it's life, and we're dealing with people, right? And we actually, as real estate licensees and as CRSs, we actually need to have psychology degrees, and we need to be able to have doctorate degrees so that we can have a better understanding of what to do. But we don't, right? Most don't. And so how can we be smart about being better and getting better and learning what we can? And by the way, I said it earlier, there are a couple different ways to learn. We can learn it by being in scenarios where we can learn possibilities, or we can learn it by experience. And if we learn it in scenarios when we talk about possibilities, we can better prepare, because learning by experience, it really is hard and it's brutal. And we're going to get it wrong sometimes. And that means we're going to, right, not have the success and not help people have the success that they want. And that's not a good way to learn. Experience is hard. So come to events and programs and classes and use tools that will help you be better.
Oh, we're coming to an end of our time. We're certainly looking forward to seeing you, Mark, at your session at Sell-a-bration. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with as we're thinking about education and connection and networking?
Yeah, you know what? The world has changed so much. It used to be that agents would invest in themselves by getting on an airplane and flying someplace commonly, right? They would just do that. And now it's almost like we have to have an event to do that. So what I would say is if you can, right? If you can find the time or make the time, then show up to the event because you'll learn more personally than you learn electronically. But let me encourage everybody, and here's my tip. If you can't come to Sell-a-bration, if you can't show up at a class because it doesn't fit your schedule, RRC is so good about having recordings or having electronic versions of the classes or of the programs. Please take advantage of those. If you're listening to this recording, that means you're already connected to RRC. And if you're connected to RRC, listen to the podcast. Pay attention to what's being offered. Explore the opportunities that are available to you and then invest into them. Because you know what, RRC, when I first started, it was just classes that we taught all over the country. We have we have an encyclopedia of ways that you can learn. And so it's always better to show up live. But if you can't, just show up, right? Get the class in a recording, maybe sign up for the podcast, take the webinar, do something that will be valuable to you. Because if you get one good point or one good idea that prevents you from having to learn through experience that's painful, it will be well worth your investment. So RRC has been around for a lot longer than I have, and we have this massive library of value. And so my tip is take advantage of it. It's right at your fingertips, right? But then show up every time you can. Just show up.
Oh, for sure. Whatever fits in your schedule and budget, take all the opportunities to learn. I love that. Any other final closing thoughts, Mark?
I just want anybody that's listening, and you can include this part, is that I'm rooting for them, right? Life is hard and business is hard. And so when we work together and find ways to get the solutions to our problems, we don't have to learn it ourselves. Sometimes we can connect with people that have already experienced it. So my invitation is just know that there are people within RRC, particularly the instructors, but then many of the practitioners. They want to succeed themselves, but they're willing to give in order to help you succeed. So let me invite you to be a member of, a participant in RRC, because it will pay you much greater dividends than you will ever have to invest into it. You'll get way more out of it than you'll put into it. If you just give a little, you'll get a lot. So anyway, I appreciate the time that you listened in today, and I hope that you heard something of value. And come see us, right? Just come see us. We'll work together to grow.
Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today for this great interview. We're looking forward to your pre-conference course on March 19th in Dallas, Texas at Sell-a-bration. And thank you so much for all the listeners who tuned in today. We're looking forward to seeing you all again next time on the Real Estate Real Talk podcast.
Thanks for listening to Real Estate Real Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, crs.com/realtalk, to your friends and colleagues. Please leave us a positive review wherever you listen to our podcast, and be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous episodes. This has been a Residential Real Estate Council production. Join us next time for another edition of Real Estate Real Talk.